And a happy Tuesday evening, Bills Mafia. That red light is on, which means this week's episode of Under Review is officially live. And I want to thank you all so much for being here as we go over yet another exciting week of Buffalo Bills training camp. There have been some standout performances, some positional battles to follow, and some notable injuries that we wanted to go over. And joining me tonight, a friend of the network, Mr. AJ Cebulski, will help me navigate through some of these positional battles, some of these highlighted players, and talk about all of the recent events going on over there at St. John. So I hope you are all excited. I know I am to get more into this topic. Again, thank you all so much for being here. Without further ado, let's go.
Previous play will go under review.
Once again, everybody, thank you all so much for being here. My name is Joe DeRosa. You can find me on Twitter/X at show_DeRosa. If you are a returning guest of the show, I appreciate you being here once again. If you are new to the show, thank you for finding us. I hope you enjoy your stay. Please feel free to drop a like on this video if you feel so inclined, as it would help our network out tremendously. And speaking of tremendous, I have a tremendous guest tonight, and that man is Mr. AJ Cebulski. AJ, thank you for being here. How you doing tonight, my friend?
Mr. Roos, Joe, I am doing pretty well on this fine Tuesday. So a lot to talk about. 6 days through camp. The pads have now been on for 2 days.
Yes, sir.
Some injuries stackpiling a little bit, specifically in one position room, but I'm sure we'll get to all that here on Under Review. And thank you for having me.
For sure, man. You're always welcome here. And for those of you who might not be aware, AJ has been on site a few times, being able to cover camp up close and personal. He has blossomed from a young Cover One intern to the newest big cheese on the scene, and we're all very happy for him. But honestly, AJ's doing great work. So after this show, when you guys are on Twitter scrolling for more Bills news, be sure to drop him a follow. And yeah, man, we are in day 2 of padded practice. Things have heated up significantly as far as the physicality, as far as the intensity for a lot of these practices. And naturally, when the pads come on, it just feels a little bit more real when you get to see them actually hitting each other. And it is exciting. And before we start tonight's show, shout out to my friend Evan. He is someone who likes the show every week and decides to drop a comment whenever he feels inclined. Hey, Joe, love the show. My mom talked to your mom and said we could play full contact football in my backyard later. So after this show, I will be going and truck sticking my buddy. All right. Let's get into tonight's episode, AJ. I got you here for about 30, 40 minutes. So let's just start off with the most hot-button topic in my eyes on the offensive side of the ball, and that is Josh Allen. And in episodes past, I've talked about my very, 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 very big optimism when it came to Josh Allen refining his mechanics. And now it is kind of coming into fruition, as reports out of camp have been that he's looked pretty sharp, making some very high level throws, throwing all over the field, finding different targets, some blemishes here and there to be expected in camp. But from your view and everything you've heard and been able to see, how are you feeling about Josh Allen in camp so far?
Yeah, I would say he's getting off to probably the best start to a training camp in his career. You look at what he's done, just the offense, I think in general, just the confidence that Joe Brady is, exuded over the course of, thank you, Tim, over the course of his career. It's just, and with this offense in the past couple of weeks has just been, phenomenal. You're seeing it. They've talked about it. They've preached it all off season, and it's coming out to fruition that the fact is this Bills offense is going to be multifaceted, versatile, put players in different spots. You got Curtis Samuel working out with running backs. You're seeing him work on option routes as a running back. You see him in the slot outside. You're seeing a multitude of different things that this Bills offense can do. And Josh Allen has been really the front runner of it, and rightfully so. He's a all pro quarterback. Should have been an all pro, but he wasn't an all pro last year. And you look at what he's done just in the first 6 days here. The day I went to camp, Joe, actually, he threw 3 picks in 4 plays. So that was kind of like, eh. But besides that, everything I've seen in earlier in that practice, he was on point. I just think you're seeing a determined Josh Allen. I think the pressure's off today. Deion Dawkins spoke at the podium today after practice, and a reporter asked him, "What's different about this Bills offense?" And he kind of like laughed for a second and said, "Well, there's no Stephon Diggs," and not as an
Mm,
insult to Diggs, but
yeah.
like this is it's a different feel. There's a lot of players stepping up, and Josh Allen. There was a lot of questions about this wide receiver unit. What can they be? Because in the past, and I've said this over and over again, and Cover One is obviously one of the people that brought this up, and I think I agree with it. Is they went from these separators, they still have them, but to these big bodied guys. Keon Coleman, big
Yep.
bodied guy, doesn't get much separation. And you go back in Josh Allen's career with Diggs, Cole Beasley, John Brown, even a Robert Foster, a Tanner Gentry
Oh
back
man.
at Wyoming. Like those guys were just fluid route running separator guys that Allen could just put the ball on the money. Now with this Keon Coleman, kind of Mac Hollins, even Dawson Knox fitting into the tight windows, Allen's been phenomenal with it. And I thought there would be some hiccups with that, but it seemed to go fluidly. And you add that to the shiftiness of Kincaid and Samuel and Shakir and their nuanced route running and the ability to find soft spots in the zone. I think you have a good mixture of talent, playmaking in that wide receiver room and tight end room and even running back room where this Bills offense has just been really sharp so far through 6 days.
Yeah, that's a great point about the difference in skill sets, and something that I think when you look at how they've constructed this offense this offseason has been something that I've been curious to see in fruition in training camp. Because when you talk about more big body guys and you talk about maybe players that aren't speedsters, aren't your conventional separators, more of catch point separators, along with using frames to get their catches, it is a little bit different than what you've seen in years past. Because as I mentioned, if 100 times in this program, Stephon Diggs is one of the best separators in the league, a stellar route runner, and someone that Josh can just know where he's going and be able to get the ball to him because he's going to get that separation. And you have a little bit of concern when you see them kind of trend from, okay, Diggs centric because he's the best receiver and this is his game too. Let's go with more of these big frame guys. Let's go see what they can do with some different looks. But I don't think that particularly meant that they couldn't separate at all. And not that you're saying that, but it
Right,
all
right.
when you see it in camp and you're starting to see how Joe Brady is actually scheming them open, I think it causes people to naturally, and I think justifiably, get a bit more optimistic about how this offense is going to look, because now you're kind of seeing the vision for what they wanted with some of these big bodied guys like Mac Hollins, who, even though he hasn't had the most stellar numbers outside of 1 year where he was pretty good in Vegas, you're seeing him work all over the field and being able to create a little bit of separation and also get put in some positions, like you said, whether it's in man or in zone, where he's able to connect with Allen and Allen just got to put it on him. And then with Keon Coleman, who we'll get more into in a little bit, that is just another example of someone who, while he still very much has a lot of refinement in his game ahead of him, someone who's showing that his skill set is a part of what is going to make this receiving core a bit more dynamic, just because he's got this frame, he's got this separation at the catch point, and his hands have been excellent. So I think when you talk about Josh Allen in relation to all these guys in the offense, it's fair to be optimistic. I'd like to continue seeing this momentum build throughout the rest of camp, but I'm really loving, and I want to go a little bit more into Joe Brady specifically, AJ, just his adjustments to the offense. Some of the things I've seen Eric and Ant and you and Alex and all of these people tweet about the formations, the cadet sets that Anthony had been talking about, the different looks that they're offering. I mean, can you give me a little bit more of your insight into what you know about Joe Brady and how you're just feeling about what he's offering for this offense? I know you briefly spoke about it, but a little more just about him as the coordinator this year and what you're expecting.
Well, yeah, Joe Brady is a wide receiver guru first and foremost. He went back in LSU, passing game coordinator, worked with Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Terrace Marshall Jr. goes to Carolina, makes Robbie Anderson a 1,000-yard player. DJ
Mm,
Moore, I know, who just signed a big extension literally just 10 minutes ago with the Bears, 4-year big deal, over $100 million. He had a great season with them. And then Mike Davis, a running back kind of wide receiver hybrid that was in Carolina. So his success in the NFL as a coach kind of was with those receivers and really boosting them up. Then he gets the OC job in Carolina, and obviously halfway through that year, it felt like they just couldn't run the ball, so they felt like they had to pass all the time, and then that kind of led to an imbalanced attack,
right.
and it kind of fell through, and then he lost his job. Now he kind of revives his career back in Buffalo, and I think it's just the energy, the confidence. The pre-snap motion is ridiculous. Almost every play, there's someone in motion trying to create mismatches along that offensive front, and you're just seeing just the versatility that all these guys have. I don't think there's one position. And I go back to the first press conference of training camp. He said we don't have positions. This is
Mm,
positionless football, and we're not. Every player on this roster. Keon Coleman talked about it. on Friday when I was at camp and just discussed like, yeah, like back in high school, it was kind of like you know your side of the field. Now then in college, you kind of learn like more about the XYZ spot, and then now it's like, man, I got to learn everything, and I love it because I'm always prepared, no matter what the call is. I know like what I'm doing, and I just think Joe Brady again, he's just a smart dude. He exudes with confidence. He's well spoken on the podium, and I think the guys believe in what he's doing and they're bought in. And his relationship with Josh Allen's obviously flourishing. They were still a top 5 offense last year, and Allen wasn't even that great. So if Allen can, figure it out, because again, down the stretch he wasn't great. They ran the ball more, whatever. I just really like what Joe Brady's done, and I'm confident in him, and I'm excited to see what this offense can do because I think it's still going to be more pass heavy than you think. I think it's going to be like a nuanced, short passing attack. Keep the defense honest with the deep ball once in a while. But I think you're going to see a timing passing attack where everything's with timing. Allen gets out of his drop, gets the ball out. Put Curtis Samuel in a one-on-one situation. Put Keon Coleman on the boundary on the outside in a one-on-one situation. Let him go to work. So I think there is, a lot of potential with this offense, and hopefully it comes together.
Really, really love that point, or those points, I should say. First and foremost, the energy you talk about with Joe Brady, to me, is imperative because it's not that Ken Dorsey never got energetic. You know what I mean? I don't want to downplay it or like make revisionist history that I didn't have any optimism for Ken Dorsey's OCing, but it does feel like Joe Brady, given some of the things you've seen about him and some of the communication he has really just been in every component of this offense, working his ass off to try and get these guys on the same page because the stakes are very high, despite it being his first year there. It's really a lot for him to prove, and I feel like that's translating into how energetic he's getting at camp, how much he's actually communicating with these players. Again, not saying that Dorsey never did this or Dable never did this. Of course they did, but kind of refreshing to see a younger coach just bringing that energy to that room. But when we get more into the structural component of this offense, you bring up motion. Motion is something that obviously it's not new, but it's something that the league has adapted to, and some of the best offenses in the league use it in so many ways, including their rushing attack, which I've also seen the Bills have been using it in that component as well, which I love to see because part of making your rushing offense dynamic and in turn your passing offense dynamic is just having as many sucker punches, as many looks as possible that you could give to a defense to a point where defending them, even just from defending the play calling and defending the coaching, is already a nightmare. And then you just, in addition, have to worry about the structure on the field, the personnel on the field. And I think the Bills, like I've been saying in weeks past, it's something I've wanted, was for them to kind of pivot more to that embryonic style, something that I thought Joe Brady could offer, that a lot of people in our network, a lot of people have said could be the future for this offense. And you're seeing it. And it's very reassuring because I think when you talk about more motion and also more play action, especially in the passing attack, which you alluded to might be still that kind of same passing attack we know and love, at least from a snap share count, I think that also quells a little bit of your worry if you're talking about maybe some of these guys not being as good of separators as a Stephon Diggs was, but rather just very sturdy, solid role players, guys that do their job very well, that can get open when they need to, but even if they're not, they just might be able to improvise if they got to improvise if a play goes off script, or maybe just the play calling and being more centric to one player skill set based on a certain defense and a play action, I think really could benefit this offense this year. We know Josh's advanced metrics when it comes to under center play action are very, very good, if not some of the best in the league. And I think more of that will be a welcomed addition. It's something I hope Joe Brady really pulls out. And based on the camp showings, it seems like it's trending that way. So reassuring to hear about him, and bringing it now to the pass catchers. I mean, I hashtagged him in the show. I mention him every week. I think the fans need to hear more about Mr. Keon Coleman. So AJ, just what are you thinking about him so far in camp?
He's a 1,000. No, I'm just joking. I think I think he's a guy that he's going to have success in this offense because I think he's going to find, like you said, Joe Brady tries to find a niche for all these guys to kind of play a role. And I think Keon Coleman's going to fill the role of big red zone target, a dependable in third and longs. And I think he's a guy that he could have a 40 to 60 catch season, around 500, 700 yards and 5 to 8 touchdowns. Now, if he's able to show the ability, because a lot of what we're seeing from him right now, and I'm not trying to knock him, but it's a lot of low red zone, high red zone work where he's getting thrown the ball on, again, one-on-ones or highly contested catch situations, and he's stabbing the ball with great hands and using his body control, his sideline awareness to come down with it, haul it in. You need to see if he's going to become a complete wide receiver one, because he's not there yet, and he's got a lot of work to do. He needs to work on again, understanding leverage and zone. I think he needs to work on, again,
Yeah.
separation underneath. When he's on that island, I know he's not the quickest, but he needs to find a way to be elusive in a way, get a sense of yards after the catch. So if he can really show that, improvise that into his game and work on the middle of the field underneath and really develop that with his game, I think he can take that next step. But man, what, like, with Xavier Worthy, you see him use his speed and showcase, and you see the clips from Chiefs camp. That's
Mhm.
what Keon Coleman is showcasing with the Bills, except he's, it's obviously a whole totally different skill set. He's showcasing his 50-50 ball ability and just his ability to go get the ball and win every time. And that's what they drafted him for. So
Yep.
again, if he can develop that underneath stuff, that a little bit more separation per se, and get yards after the catch consistently, I think he can become a complete wide receiver. But again, they don't need him to be that yet because they have so many other guys that they can really use in this offense.
And that's a great point, a great way to end it. He doesn't need to be complete yet. Would you like him to be? Absolutely. Do I hope he becomes that? For sure. Do I expect it? No, I don't, because Keon Coleman just turned 21 years old and is a very unrefined project wide receiver that you took based on the ceiling that exists with him, which I think is very real. And what makes me happy about what we've seen in camp so far, again, is just, okay, we know you're not the greatest, most polished route runner. Okay, we know that you're not the most clean cut and that your cuts are most clean. That was not supposed to come out as early as it did. But you know what I mean? There's a lot of roughness to his game, a lot of clunkiness to his game. When I watched him on tape, that was something I noticed. And now when I see him in camp, certain things still look a little bit, not awkward, because awkward is the wrong word. He's developing and he's working on it, but it's not where I think it will be maybe in a year, maybe in 2 years. But what we do know about Keon Coleman is that, again, great hands. Literally, as I said that, shout out to John Robert, who just said great hands. So yes, he has great hands, exceptional body control, separates at the catch point well. When he has the ball in his hands, he's a menace. All realistic things that I think will exist for him in this Bills offense. And what I got really excited about was, we talked about this a few weeks on the show, me and Mike Bunt, and I had said, and he had said, that we didn't want Keon Coleman to be locked in a box like FSU kind of did with him, right? Because FSU saw big, tall receiver and said, ooh, throw him the ball down the field 100 times and let's hope it works. And sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. But where I thought Keon Coleman shined a lot when I did watch him was anytime he was going over the field, anytime he was crossing, anytime, even though it wasn't the smoothest, he was finding ways to get open. And when he had the ball in his hands, I mean, again, he's a hard guy to bring down. So there is a usage for that I think is immediate for him. And now that we're seeing him kind of do the things we were hoping he would do well, at least to start well in camp, you build off those things. And I know that Anthony, who has been at many, many training camp practices so far, and his show's on after this, I implore you all to watch it, of course, but I talked about how he was very pleased seeing the development in Keon Coleman's understanding of, again, nuance in his route running, leverages. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. And he's not saying it's perfect, but rather that there's a trend. There's an upwards trajectory for Keon Coleman. And I still hold true that I don't think he has 1,000 yards this year. I think it's way more likely it's a 5 to 650, maybe 700 range, just for how much this ball will be dispersed and how I think to start limited his role will be as far as how much you're leaning on him. Not that they're going to box him in, but that we're not going to ask this guy to do too much in his rookie season unless he really proves it, or there's insurmountable injuries, which I hope doesn't happen, knock on wood. We're just going to get very modest play out of him. And I think a good camp paired with those expectations make for a very fun year ahead for Keon Coleman. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm very glad to see that he's shining so far. But let's talk about the rest of the room. And we have, Dalton Kincaid, who's shown some really nice plays. Obviously, Curtis Samuel had some highlight catches and has been a very favorite target of Josh Allen, as well as Mac Hollins, who has had some solid play. I mean, talk to me about the rest of this room. And guys, don't worry, we will talk about the final wide receiver spot because there is a guy that's being mentioned in the comment section. But before we get there, talk to me about the other options that we know are locks for this roster and how they're performing.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, and maybe this is probably more semantics than actual film or anything, but I think all these guys on this roster have something to prove, whether it be Dalton Kincaid, who in his rookie year got outshined by Sam Laporta. And I know he might not care about that, but a guy that he had so much, hype for him coming out. And he, obviously Sam Laporta is all talked about and everyone's like, oh, Sam Laporta is the guy. He's a higher Madden rating, all that stuff. A Curtis Samuel, who his quarterback play, he said the likes of Taylor Heineke, Sam Howell, Teddy Bridgewater, PJ Walker, Cam Newton on the downward of his career. and has not really had much success. A guy that ran a sub 4.35 coming out was really good with Joe Brady in Carolina. I think he has something to prove. A Khalil Shakir who struggled to see the field in his rookie year comes out last year, produces more toward the end of the season, and it gets on the field because of his run blocking to start the year, which he struggled with his rookie year. So improves on that, and now he has a huge opportunity, in front of him as the only returning guy that's caught a ball from Josh Allen in the previous season. So he's got a huge opportunity in front of him. And then you just look at Dawson Knox, who was hurt all of last season, who has that contract. Oh, you're overpaid. You're overpaid. He has a big opportunity to not only showcase his ability in the red zone and 12 personnel, but I think as a run blocker in 11, and even just being making those highlight plays or setting the tone early. Go to him early. Let him truck a guy. Make him, an impact guy, because he has that physicality that really can set that tone on the offensive side of the ball. So you look at the pass catching unit. I put the tight ends in there. I think, you look at a Ray Davis, who I think they brought him in.
Yep.
They could have gone with the bruiser, but they went with a guy that could catch out of the backfield. You pair that with James Cook. I just really think that a lot of these guys have something to prove. And I think that's huge, because even Josh Allen has something to prove. So you just look at the whole offense, and I think there are a lot of guys, and you go on the depth chart, a Chase Claypool who's fighting for his NFL career, a KJ Hamler who's fighting for his NFL career, and Andy Isabella, who, all these guys that were highly touted coming out, second rounders, all fighting for their career. I think it just bodes well for competition and, an overall kind of sense of urgency among this group.
Yeah. Talking about the intermediate guys, I mean, again, I love the Curtis Samuel conversation, because every time there's something brought up about him, whether it's from his metrics, whether it's from how successful he was in certain types of coverages or certain types of route run, and then you talk about his quarterback list, I just sit there and think like, dude, what are the odds that this guy actually has like a career year at the age, I think 27 going to be 28. I mean, I don't think it's unlikely to say that, given the past of what he's already worked with, a healthy Curtis Samuel that at least plays most of the season is not only relied on in a way where his numbers look good, but like an integral part of this offense, especially when you talk about pre-snap looks. And based on what we're seeing out of camp with Joe Brady, we're seeing him in the backfield. We're seeing him out wide. We're seeing him in the slot. We're seeing him go down in one-on-ones. We're seeing him go over the middle in slants and crossing patterns. Like, there is so much that is being asked of Curtis Samuel, because he could do it. He's done it in the past. And now with a guy like Josh Allen, a quarterback that already has success throwing to all three levels of the field, now has a guy who actually could be viable at all three levels in the field. That isn't just Stephon Diggs, but rather a part of this, again, amoeba offense that has just so many different contributors. So I'm so excited about that. I'm already very excited about Dalton Kincaid. Again, I think his year 2 development is going to go as we expected to. Just already a very nice route runner. The second half of his rookie season was already turning into something that was a lot of fun to keep up with, and seeing him, expand on his yards per route run, go further down the field, be asked to do these different things. And, as a rookie, I love that. And now you have year 2, where I think Kincaid is the tide that lifts all boats. I mean, I think having him as a viable threat, that whether it's 11 or 12, he's on the field and he's causing havoc, just like, it gives you more creativity as an OC to do whatever you want, because the threat of him exists. It's there. So I'm just very excited about that. I'm very excited about, again, like, the potential for what Matt Collins could do, not as a X top of the room guy, but rather like solid blocker, good locker room guy, and a guy with a little bit of juice downfield. Like, I said this, but he was one of those value signings to me, because he came from an Atlanta offense that was just woefully underperforming, right? Desmond Ridder is not getting the most out of these guys on a consistent week-to-week basis. So these pass catching options that aren't Drake London are going to be very cheap options on the market for a team that is in salary cap hell. So now you bring in Matt Collins, and you look at what he's done in his past, and he has 1 year where he eclipsed 700 plus yards for the Raiders, but he did well with what I would argue is the best quarterback he's played with so far in his career, or one of the best quarterbacks he's played with so far in his career, in Derek Carr. So now you have Matt Collins playing with Josh Allen. Now you have Matt Collins not being the one, but rather just one of your boundary X's and being able to be used around the field. And also how maybe him as a blocker now opens him up to maybe leaking out of certain formations and getting schemed open or put in one-on-ones with undersized DBs. Like, I think Matt Collins' floor on this team and ceiling aren't too far apart, but rather it's still going to be a quality option to fill the middle part of your wide receiver room. And I think fans are allowed to be excited about Matt Collins in that regard. not a 1,500-yard guy, nothing crazy like that, but just a productive option. And again, another big red zone body. But now we move on to the age-old question that I've asked Mike on the show, and I'll ask you. But how many wide receivers do you think make this roster, and who do you think's the front runner right now?
So my 53 man, I had 6, and it's funny because I said 7. Oh, they're going to keep 7 this year. They've only done it once, and they're being 10 year. This is the year they do it because it makes sense. But I think I want to still say 6. I haven't seen enough from KJ Hamler. Now, if they value him enough to like if he's that good, like if he shows out in preseason, he can beat Declan Hardy, who I think again got first team reps at nickel when Taron Johnson had a vet rest day on Monday. So Declan Hardy's value to the team is worth more because I think Saran Neal was a guy that, again, a special teams ace, but I don't think they trusted him. And I'm not saying they didn't trust him. He was still out there at times, but he just didn't perform well when given the opportunity behind Taron Johnson when he went down. So I think Declan Hardy's value is just more at this point. So unless KJ Hamler really goes crazy, I just don't see a spot for him. And again, he's had some injury concerns, and he's just a guy that is yet to really stick on a roster. So you look at, the 4 guys that are locks. I would go Hollins, Shakir, Samuel, and Coleman. Then, MVS has been running with the 2s and 3s. I know he had a play today where he got deep over the middle and made a nice play on the ball. Again, that's really all he can do is run, straight line speed, one direction, or run deep post routes. He doesn't really have that much, ability to get open any part of the field. So I don't know where the spot is for him. Terrell Shavers is a guy that, the whole team is, talked to like everyone. Everybody. Deion Dawkins brought him up today. Sean McDermott talked about how consistent he's been. And then you got to Chase Claypool, who I think is, again, the injuries, obviously lingering his ability to be on the field. But what can he be? So I'd have 6 guys. I'd probably put, I think it's between Claypool, MVS, and a Shavers right now for 2 of 3 spots. If they keep 6, if they keep 7, maybe throw in Hamler in there, and maybe 4 of the, 3 of the 4 make it. But I'm right now I'm at 6, and I would go. If I had to choose today based off camp, I would probably go Shavers, and I'd probably go on VS because that's just kind of how I feel with MVS is obviously his experience in this league and what he's done with quarterbacks and how he's been the reason that they're all good. But that's for another conversation.
I gotcha. And I think that's a great take. I'm going to say 6 is still my final tally. I won't say who, but I'll say right now, I think the front runner is Shavers. And I think the front runner is Shavers because the only way I see Hamler making the team is if he has that return juice. And, he's not an overtly experienced guy in that regard. But he is fast and he is a weapon when he can get his legs going. And I think for that reason, they want him to be, and they want to see it out of him. So should they see more in camp or in preseason, I think that'll turn a lot of heads. And it's why I'm not definitively crowning Terrell Shavers as this guy yet, because he's having a nice camp, but we know how this goes. Some years that happens and then they drop off, or it surprises people. They fall in love with them. And then all of a sudden they're going to practice squad designations or not even on the team in a few months' time, AKA Brandon Riley, Derek Rogers. Like I could keep going. So I think I would say right now for the camp he's having and for what his opposition as far as that final spot are doing right now, it's Shavers to lose. Again, if you can get return juice out of Hamler, then I think that's going to be a big leg up, and that speed component's going to be very fun for this offense. If you're talking about a guy that could be more of like a window dressing type of option on certain packages, whether that's in play action, whether that's in running, where you just have him be a pawn to move around the line and just scare people into defending him and clearing up some space. Chase Claypool, the injury is unfortunate and untimely. I do want to see what happens when he comes back and he's healthy enough to practice more efficiently. Is that toe going to bother him throughout the offseason? Is it going to stymie his impact in the preseason? Are we going to see any sort of drop off from Chase Claypool or anything that makes you feel like you're not comfortable getting it? I had said a few weeks ago that I think like he has a good shot to get that back end of the room. I think if they value the frame and the blocking, then it makes perfect sense to get Claypool in there. But I think right now, the way I view it is Shavers is at the top of the leaderboard. Howard. You got Hamler behind him and Claypool behind him as well. But I think they're going to walk away with 6 wide receivers. And I'm still of the mindset that MVS is a roster lock. I don't think they get rid of him. I think the contract, I know that they've, in the past cut OJ Howard, who had some guaranteed money in his deal. But I just find that the skill set of MVS combined with the size is valuable in its own right. And even if he's getting work with 2s and 3s, like a go ball deep route guy is needed in this offense, even if that's all he freaking does. Because guess what? Like, they're going to see the 2 high shell at some point. And even if they don't, then guess what? MVS goes in a one-on-one. He's probably going to win it because he's fast. If not, then guess what? You have a guy that could just be used as a pawn because he's a role-playing 1-year deal receiver. He's not your alpha. Go ask this guy to just run a post route, draw some coverage off. Let's just stretch the defense out and get some opening. Like, he's a guy who could do that. I just don't see the need to cut him unless cutting him means KJ Hamler gets a spot. And even if he is a little bit smaller, you do ask him to do some of those similar things because of his speed. So we will have to see with that. But that is our conversation on the offense. AJ, let's transition over to defense. And we're going to start with the unfortunate conversation, the hard talk that everyone needs to listen in on that we didn't want to be having, but we're going to. And that's about the safety room. Mike Edwards, hamstring injury, week to week. Week to week, meaning could be 2, could potentially be 3 weeks of very little to no activity, which is very unfortunate for a free agent you signed that you were hoping could take one of the either starting or primary rotational spots in your safety room. But now we pair this with Cole Bishop, who goes with an injury today. I'll first ask you, do you know anything more of what's going on with him? And if not, just talk to me about your outlook as the safety room as a whole.
Yeah, so Josh Reed just reported after practice that he saw a wrap on his arm, and Alex from Batavia, who my sidekick per se, he mentioned that his arm was dangling a little bit near the sideline, but no information about anything. Again, he just walked off the field, and there's that. So again, I think this is a concern because if there was any kind of injury bug to plague a room, I think safety's like kind of at the top of that list of things that you don't want to see, just because of the fact all these guys are in a new system except Taylor Rapp. Taylor Rapp, I think, has been phenomenal. Again, a consistent guy. Has started every single day. I saw him intercept the ball when I was at practice, so obviously that stood out to me and made a good play on the ball. But you look at the rest of this room, if Bishop and Edwards are able to sit out for a couple weeks, they signed Kareem Jackson today, 15-year NFL veteran, got suspended twice last year for dirty hits. So that's definitely very interesting. He's a guy that, again, he started 17 games with the Broncos in 2022. Didn't really do much, but I mean, he did have 94 tackles, 55 solo, two tackles for loss. So a little bit of stuff, 3 passes defended, but nothing crazy. So he's been a guy that's been around the league and has had some success. So we'll see where he fits in if he has any opportunity. But I mean, Mike Edwards is a guy that hasn't gotten any reps really. He was hurt majority of the offseason programs and now into training camp. Cole Bishop, who's a rookie that needs these reps, and he was playing great. I saw him fly through the line of scrimmage for what would have been a sack on Friday. For a guy that is fighting, and that's what he showcased on his college tape, a guy that can play close to the line of scrimmage and get to the quarterback. He's a guy that they really value, I think. And I've said it since the beginning. He's a guy that if he can put it together, I think he can start sooner rather than later. Like, I don't really think there's like a lot of people are like hesitant with him, but I really think he could be sooner or, starting sooner rather than later. And then again, Damar Hamlin has been consistent as they come this offseason, and we'll see what he does. But yeah, there's definitely some major concern there when you losing Bishop and Edwards, and all you have is Rapp, D. Delaney, Damar Hamlin, and a Kareem Jackson. So we'll see. I mean, yeah, D. Delaney has some starting experience, but how much? I'm definitely concerned about the room right now.
And I recall Delaney being a bit more of a slaughter box guy. Like, I think he can play the free safety position, but definitely more of a limited option. That would mean that if you somehow turned to him to take that role, you'd probably be asking Rapp to play more one of the deep safety looks and maybe asking Delaney to play a little bit out. I got to look at his snaps again because I could have that misconstrued. But what I will say is, just talking about Bishop, I hope he's healthy. I hope at the very least, whatever injury this isn't something too severe. But I was of the mindset that he could be a starter right away. And I think what's unfortunate about the timing of this injury was the fact that I think he was just about to hit his stride, because you were seeing each day in camp, like again, more and more plays, more and more recognition, more and more run defensive plays, more sacks, more coverage plays, things that you're like, oh, okay, this kid's starting to get it. And I think the communication and the consistency and the reps are just going to get him there. And my stance had been the flashes in camp are going to win the coaching staff over. He's going to get that spot with what looks to be Taylor Rapp. I think is pretty much right at this point. They haven't budged him out of the position. They need stability of one of those two safeties, and they're choosing him. So I think Rapp is your other starter. So I'm disappointed to see Bishop get this injury now, go down, and just not be able to practice maybe. We'll have to see what it looks like after tomorrow, because I think they have the rest day tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken, AJ. So they get that day off, and then they have the day to come back. Is it going to be day to day? Are we talking week to week? Are we down two safeties? Because if they are, I've been happy with what Damar Hamlin's been able to do in training camp, and I'm happy that he's gotten some reps with the ones, and I'm happy that, you know, he is a guy that had played under McDermott and had that year when Hyde went down to take his role. I just have some skepticism on what he'll look like as a full year, but you never know. I mean, he's a motivated guy. He tries to hit hard. I think he's had some good coverage plays in the past, some lapses for sure, but I think that's to be expected with a true, I guess if you want to call him first year starter, even though it wasn't by design. So, I mean, I wouldn't be the most confident in the room if you can't have Bishop or Edwards at like a full click or missing some time. But I forgot where I saw this point. I don't remember. And I apologize to whoever made this point, wherever I saw it, if it was on one of our shows, if it was on your show. But someone had brought up the point about how Bernard was also hurt throughout most of camp and still came in for that starting spot towards the end of preseason and ended up, obviously, the rest is history, dominating. So my apologies to whoever, again, made that point. It is very annoying that I can't remember where I got it from. But, you know, at the same time, we value the reps, we value the communication and the experience. But it could just be ability. It could be the desire to just want to do well in your role. But I think it also is a little bit different with linebacker and safety, even though it was the Mike role for Bernard. So we'll see what ends up happening. I'm hoping Bishop recovers well. I don't want to, you know, put too much stock into Kareem Jackson being more than a camp body, but like, we're just going to have to wait and see. So safety room, I was a little more optimistic than them when Bishop, and then he gets hurt. Hopefully it's not serious, but let's go to a different part of the secondary. Let's talk about the corners. And listen, I think Douglas and Benford are starters. I've seen good reps from them. They've obviously gotten beaten one-on-ones as well. So like, that's just to be expected with corners, but Kaiir Elam, let's talk about Kaiir Elam. And honestly, we can talk about Jamarcus Ingram too, since I got you for a few more minutes. Your thoughts on them so far, as Alex wants to compliment your very lovely hair. Hi, Alex.
Hey, Alex.
So talk to me about these two quarters and your outlook on them, the camp they're having, what you're feeling about them.
Yeah, I talked about it early today on our podcast, me and Alex is on right here, right now, that Elam, it feels like one podcast I'm recording, or we're recording, is, oh my God, he made a splash play. He looks great. Like, he looked great today. Next day, he had a holding penalty here, had a pass interference penalty there, was in the wrong spot there. I think what comes down to Kaiir, and I've said this with, you know, the Levi Wallaces and the Dane Jacksons of the world, is that they were never great, but they were consistent. And I think with Kaiir, he needs to stack consistent days, because to this point, I've yet to hear like 3 days in a row of Kaiir Elam looks good. There's always something that, you know, on the other side of the coin. So I think with Kaiir, it's just building that consistency. He's spoken well. He's been very open with the media. He knows this is a big year. Former first rounder, has a great opportunity in front of him. If someone goes down, he's probably next man up, right? With Douglas and Bedford, if they were to go down with injury. So I think with Elam, you like what you've seen from him from the offseason program to now and in training camp. He's made interceptions. He's been in the right spot. I witnessed him, you know, Keon Coleman and Josh Allen were not on the same page, and it went right in Elam's hand. He was in the right spot, per se, I guess, and ran it back to the house. So I think what Kaiir brings to the table is what is valuable to the Bills, but I just want to see the consistency. And then on Jamarcus Ingram, Deion Dawkins said today in the post-presser, favorite young guy in the team. He won 2 one-on-one battles today. His physicality, a 3-year UDFA that he's really shined. And a CB4 was a battle I was intrigued with. Can Cam Lewis maybe sneak in there? Can he play some boundary? That's not the case. So I think with Jamarcus Ingram, I'm not saying he's a lock, but from everything we've seen so far, everything I've seen, I've really liked his game. And again, his physicality, his speed, everything is all there. So I'm intrigued with what he can be.
Jamarcus Ingram has had limited reps or not as a starter, but as a depth piece in this defense, and he's done pretty well in the time you've asked him to play. And now you're getting more of him in camp. And what I'm asking of this man is to just be a solid CB4, like we had in years past, like we've seen from some of the depth guys like Dane Jackson and Levi Wallace. If I can get that out of him, I'll be happy as a clam. So to hear that he's having a solid camp, all I needed to hear, I'm totally fine with that. And it's really just one of those things where, I trust McDermott's development of DBs, which is why I should be a little more optimistic about the safety room too. But I think that's a little bit of a different circumstance considering that there's a lot to be asked of these guys, and the injuries to me do make me worrisome for some of the other guys filling in and how much they played, maybe free safety in other defenses or the specific type of scheme McDermott's running. But with these guys, these corners, specifically guys like Ingram, it's nice to see a solid camp. I don't need him to be extraordinary. Just play your spot. Do well when we need you to do well. They're never going to ask this man to one-on-one Tyreek Hill or Jamar Chase or anything like that. He's going to play zone. He'll have his man reps against probably lesser receivers in certain offenses. And for that reason, I'm okay with the way he's been so far and encouraged for him at the CB4 role. When we talk about Kaiir Elam, I had Tilt on last week and we were just like, I want a good camp from Elam. And there's been highs, but there's also been his struggles, especially penalties. And I think that's my focal point of concern for Kaiir Elam right now. Isn't so much his playing on the ball. His playing on the ball has been pretty good. He's been in spots. He's been able to jump on things. I think he's a very instinctual corner, and that's just what he seems to be for me. His game is going to be a lot of read and react versus like, I'm going to sit in my spot and I'm going to just like, man it down with perfect discipline. Like he seems like the type of guy who is just going to like try to be a ball hawk, try to get out of position to go make a play if he has to. And he's handsy. And the handsy nature doesn't always have to be a bad thing, as you've seen in certain defenses around the league. And no, I'm not saying that these guys are committing DPI every single play or holding every single play, but some of the best corners in the league are good at the balance of using their hands. They're good at being able to use them enough or efficiently enough where they can get the benefit of the doubt, basically towing that line before it becomes a flag. You could talk about guys like Sauce Gardner. You could talk about like L'Jarius Sneed, Trent McDuffie from the Chiefs, guys that are really good at doing that. I think with Elam, if anything, what I would actually expect out of him at this point, considering what we're hearing in camp, is for him to just continue being that handsy guy, but maybe working on using them more tastefully, more selectively, being able to avoid getting the laundry more often than not by just knowing and getting a feel for how much you could truly get away with as you get more consistent reps at corner this year, which I expect him to. But the high points have been good. You've been seeing plays on the ball. Again, you've been seeing him sit in his spot. You've been seeing him kind of read the quarterback's eyes and go jump a route. And I think that's encouraging. And I would like a little bit more clean play, a little bit more consistency from Elam. But I think to start camp, that's still, in my eyes, better than what we've seen in years past. And I think the future is still a bit brighter for him. And I'm hoping that if he continues this trend and stays healthy, CB3 is his. He'll have the keys to it. He'll be a primary rotational guy, and we'll ultimately get a Kaiir Elam that we can look on and say, hey, he ain't that bad. Maybe is he a first-round pick? Living up to the potential? I don't know. But like at this point, I'm cool with him just being good and not amazing. I would love for him to be amazing, but just good's fine too. You know what I mean? So I didn't want that to get... Didn't want that to be misconstrued as, oh my God, he's totally fine with him just being okay. Like, yeah, but also like if he's elite too, that'd be great. So I'll leave it there. AJ, I know you got to run, but I want you to first and foremost, thank you for being here. You are a great guest and your insight is awesome every time you're on. And, really happy to see the work you've been doing. As Alex has said, you have been killing it over at the Batavia Daily News. You are the best free agent signing of the offseason. And I tend to agree. You guys are doing great work over there. Shout out to Alex who joined us tonight. AJ, tell the good folks where they could find you on social media, what you got going on, and what they need to know about you.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter. My handle's right there, right here on the thing right there. Yep, AJ Savalsky. So just my name. You can find our podcast over on YouTube, the Batavia Daily News, right here, right now. We've been giving live shows every single day. Alex is in person, and occasionally I'm in there, but usually I'm here in my studio. And then all my work, all my sports stuff is on the dailynewsonline.com. Check out all my Twitter stuff. Pretty active on there, especially now that it's Bills season. I tend to try to find cool stats, try to maybe get into it with some Dolphins Jets fans as the season gets on here. So really looking forward to it. Joe, thank you for having me on. Always a great show. You're always so well versed. I always learn something new from you. And again, I appreciate all the work you guys do over at Cover One and everything you've done for me as well.
Thank you so much for being in here, man. I appreciate the kind words, and yeah, keep crushing it, dude. You're seeing you grow every year has been fun to watch. I've only been in the space for so long, but you were one of the first people I interacted with at Cover One. So always a pleasure, man. Get a good night's sleep. I know you got a lot of work ahead of you with the rest of camp and off season hitting, but you're welcome back anytime, and hope you have a great night.
You too, Joe.
Take care, man. All right, friends, guess what? It is that rare situation, that once in a blue moon situation where Joe is by himself. For probably around the next 10 or 15 minutes or so, I am going to be here alone in front of my webcam with a microphone, facing all of you, the beautiful viewers, who are welcome to ask me any questions or talk about anything they feel like talking about in the chat. I'm basically pulling my own disguised coverage for the next 15 minutes. But before we do that, folks, there's one important thing that two distinguished gentlemen on the other line want to tell you all about, and that, my friends, is the one pass. Greg Tomset, Aaron Quinn, what do you got?
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
Yes, my dear friends, for just 60 gold doubloons, you can become a Cover One Insider. And let me tell you, folks, that insider, that one pass, that is the lifeblood of our network. That is the... what's the word? Crux, the basis of how we're able to get everything done on this network. Is that the right word? Seriously, that gives us all the access to all of the resources that we use on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour, minute-to-minute basis for each and every one of you that tunes into our programs, that reads the articles, or keeps up with any of us on social media. I think it is very important that you sign up because it is a fun time to be a One Pass member, guys. It is. We have just migrated over to Discord, and the Discord chat is booming, alive and well. I know some of you from the Discord are here tonight, and I always appreciate your view. But more fun things are on the horizon. As RJ says, I am 100% sure that $60 and 60 gold doubloons are not of equal value. You know what? You're probably right. I wouldn't know. But what I will say is I'm going to keep saying it. And even if it's wrong, I'm going to continue saying it. And if you think I'm wrong and dumb for that, I'm still going to keep saying it. So it rolls off the tongue. It's fun to say. But real fast, I see a couple questions so far. I will get to these one moment. But I did want to bring up one thing, and that is the Buffalo Bills defensive line. And I do think I should spend a little bit time talking about Von Miller. Von Miller, obviously, this past season took what was very obviously an injury-related regression. He was not the same player, a shell of his former self. You can very clearly see that that motor was, while maybe in spirit there, did not have the same burst, did not have the same bend, did not look like the same pass rusher. And you go through the rest of this season. Sorry, good comment just came in. You go through the rest of the season asking yourself, when with Von Miller? Is it ever going to come into fruition? Are we going to get him back? Not really. By the playoffs, you kind of see a very slight uptick in Von Miller's game. The Steelers game, he has a pressure, and I know he had one because the entire timeline was saying, oh my God, did Von almost get a sack? Which kind of is very telling about how bad things were at the time. So I want to give a shout out to Von Miller just for what he's doing in camp right now. It is obviously still to be determined on what it'll look like on game day, but based on all accounts, I know Eric was there today. Anthony has talked about this. Many of the Bills beat reporters have talked about this. He's looking good. He's looking healthy. He looks like the Von Miller of old. And I'm very excited for this because if Von Miller is actually at the Von Miller form we know and love, the one that we had 8 sacks from before his ACL injury, I'm not joking when I tell you I think this Bills pass rush answers a lot of my doubt and becomes maybe a top 5 unit. I would definitely say top 10. They would be quite pressure heavy. His ability to be a pass rush specialist and maybe still man some run defense in addition to some of your other players, including uptick snaps for AJ Epineza, an increased role for Greg Rousseau, and of course the interior D-line that's going to be healthy. I think that is a huge thing for this pass rush as a whole naturally, and I think it takes them from a unit you have questions about to if a healthy Vaughn is there, if he is productive, this entire team is going to eat on the defensive line. And that's very good when you talk about a team that might have some coverage trouble if they have some injuries in the safety room. But yeah, I'm excited about Von Miller. And lastly, just because it's my name tonight, Greg Rousseau, I got to give a shout out to Gregory Rousseau for also looking very good in practice, being a good run defender, but also getting some success in the pass rush. I think, and I tweeted this, and some of you might have seen it, I think a healthy interior defensive line is the difference between Gregory Rousseau just being good and him having a double-digit sack season. I think prior to his foot injury, a healthy Greg Rousseau was on pace to get double-digit sacks last year, but it did not happen. He gets stepped on. It does not work. And of course, he doesn't come back 100%. But the advanced metrics would tell you that Gregory Rousseau was looking promising. I believe he was in the top 15 for pass rush productivity among qualifying edge rushers. And I think there is still more development ahead for Greg Rousseau. I'm hoping this is the year. And so far, camp is showing that that is a thing to buy into as he continues to get his reps. So that's it on the D-line. That's all I wanted to say. Happy as a clam about it so far. Let's start with this obvious question. Who's winning the quarterback competition right now? The only correct answer is Mitch Trubisky. Anyone who thinks otherwise clearly doesn't know anything about football. Mitch Trubisky is the best quarterback in the NFL. And if you disagree, I would suggest you go watch football, because who else was the first unanimous MVP? I mean, come on, guys. It's Mitch Trubisky. Easy. Okay. And thank you, RJ. Yes, I do have to keep saying it. And Roy, yes, 53-man roster projection is going to come. I don't know about second preseason game, probably around that time. I would like to say I'm going to just, that's going to be something that I might pivot my show topic to if I think I have a very concrete kind of idea of what it will be. I usually wait till like the very last moment where I could actually have it, because you never know with cuts and surprise cuts or who might be added later on if there's another injury. Like, I don't want to have to basically type out the whole thing just to change it last minute. So second preseason game is when I'll start considering it. And if I think it seems like, that third game, no one's really trotting out, no starters or anything important, or everyone stays healthy, everything is as is, I'll go for it there. And good comment from RJ. I love the fact that AJ went from an intern to Bills media mogul. AJ's doing work, man. Doing work. I'm really proud of the kid. He's awesome. He's a great guest, and I was happy to have him on here tonight. So let's move on. Do you think any surprise, or who do you think is the surprise cut this year, if any? This is a good question. I'd have to think on this a little bit more, but if I had to say one right now that I think would probably be like, honestly, even though I think he's a lock to make the roster, it would surprise me, and I think it would be telling of the Bills' value of the position, or maybe what they're going for offensively, if they did MVS. But I don't know if there's anyone really I would say is a true surprise cut. Like, I don't know if that's going to happen this year. It feels like with how much turnover there is on the offense, like a lot of these receivers that they signed, or a lot of these guys that they have in place, are pretty much set in my eyes. Like, even then, like, I'm saying MVS just to give you kind of an answer, but I don't really have one that I think would be a true surprise cut. Maybe Mike Edwards, if he doesn't, like, if the hamstring is lingering throughout camp and they don't feel confident enough in his availability. But even then, like, you're so thin at that position, would you actually cut him? I don't know, unless Kareem Jackson has the camp of his life at 36 years old. Yeah, I don't know if I have a surprise cut this year. I'd have to think on this one a little bit more, but I guess just to give you guys a bone, throw you something, I'll say MVS. So yeah, man. And Walter S. with Trubisky has more MVPs than Allen. Yes, I think he does, actually. I think Allen has a couple and Trubisky has like one more than him. I know he got one for that playoff game against Dallas, which was one of the greatest moments in sports Twitter history in my eyes. That was truly a different time. But yeah, guys, I don't really have too much else to talk about tonight, other than I'll go a little bit more into Josh Allen and the mechanical side, because I talked about this a few weeks ago, and I tweeted about this a couple nights ago as well. But I think with Josh Allen's mechanics, I had a conversation about kind of what does it actually mean for the offense. And I think this has very big payoff if it goes the way we'd hope. And it's camp. quarterbacks of his level are going to make really good throws all the time. So I don't want to say it's just the camp training throws are telling me everything about his mechanical shift. I still need to see it in the regular season. But I think when you talk about Joe Brady's offense and you talk about what this Bills offense needs from Josh Allen, it's for him to, one, be decisive, because a big point in my eyes with Josh Allen's game last year that led to a lot of strife was indecision in his kind of lack of confidence to throw over the middle of the field, maybe from not being totally prepared for maybe whatever choice that receiver had at that moment. I think confidence and that assertiveness in his throwing is one part of his game, so a mental step. But pair that with the fact that you need him to be refined and you need him to be sharp and you need him to be accurate, because I think that a lot of this offense is going to predicate itself on short to midfield accuracy, guys that are getting open, and something that AJ talked about before and that's been talked about on this network a little bit, timing with these receivers and the ability to throw accurately to these receivers on time, in rhythm, with sound, solid mechanics. I think Josh Allen having those lapses in that was a problem last year in those parts of the field as well as deep down the field. Now that we get into this year and we've seen him go back to the lab and work on his mechanics a bit more, I do think that now that is as important as ever, because that fine throwing motion is going to be the difference between maybe the ball being slightly behind somebody, the ball being right on someone's chest and stopping them for what would have otherwise been a very productive yak opportunity. Two, now I can lead my receiver effectively. I can get the ball in his hands, lead him forward, and be able to get him down the field. And I think I talked about this with Uber, but the screen game. When you talk about wanting to improve the screen game, part of that is how Josh Allen throws these balls and how he delivers them to these guys in those spots. If you are not able to accurately throw a pass, the momentum of your screen is going to suffer greatly. With Josh refining his mechanics and being able to work on his torque and maybe the angle for how he's delivering the ball to his side, that could be a huge difference in the success of these plays more consistently this year than last year, because there were times when it worked and it looked great. And I think the personnel that they have this year for Josh Allen to refine that in the screen game is even better suited to be more explosive in that regard. So pair that with also the fact that the downfield accuracy could improve a little bit and the touch on Allen's deep shots could be a little bit better. Then you talk about those finite opportunities because the Bills face too high shells and the explosive plays go away a little bit more. I think now with a fundamental shift in his mechanics and just getting things back to being tight and just looking smooth and polished, you now also get the opportunity for those deep shots to, even if they're not as frequent, still be successful and in turn still be explosive and help this offense out tremendously. So I just wanted to go a little bit further down that road about Josh Allen's mechanics, because I know that take kind of sounded like, oh man, like his completion percentage will get better, or maybe he'll do a little bit better. I don't think so. I think that it's going to have massive dividends for a Bills offense that needs him to be playing at top level and is really hedging their bets on him taking that step forward. Because also, when you talk about Josh Allen's mechanics and you talk about how they've constructed this room, if Allen has a career year with this type of receiving core, you just created yourself as a GM, as an organization, a much better opportunity and more peace when you talk about future offensive roster construction. It's not to say that they won't go out and get high tier, big ticket players or draft a really good receiver if he falls in their lap. Not that, but rather that the pressure to do so because you feel that Josh Allen needs that alpha is kind of gone, because you've given Josh Allen these keys, these kind of a bunch of really solid options, but no true alpha, no true elite, at least if Coleman doesn't actually end up panning out to be that way or Kincaid isn't a Kelsey-like tight end. But you're still getting success. Then I think it's beautiful because the investment you can make into this offense now changes fundamentally to how much money you would actually want to allocate per player. Would that be the case? We would have to see. But ultimately, I think it puts a little bit pressure on Bean for his offensive roster construction until they would have to make the choice to move on from certain players if they price themselves out, or if they want to just, keep these guys and just continue to stack rookies that they know can play well with Allen, because Allen will get them to play at a high level because of his high level of play. So I hope that point made that sense. It sounded like it did in my mind, but either way, guys, I think that's all I got for you. And I'm just going to answer this question real fast. What would a Justin Simmons contract look like given our cap situation? This is a question you got to ask Greg Tomset. I would be doing myself and you a disservice if I tried to answer a cap question on the show. Cap is not my game. I try to understand it. I'm working on it, but this is a Greg Tomset question, and I think Greg could give you a much better answer than I could. I have humility, folks. I will not box myself into a corner. And I'm going to ask or find this one question Roy asked earlier. other than Simmons or Hyde, what free agent safety would you be okay with if Bean had to sign one? Well, if he could find the funding for it, it would be Justin Simmons, obviously, or Quandre Diggs, one of those two guys. I just think when you look at who's available right now and there aren't that many options, they're the ones that I think would quell a lot of my worry. But again, like, are you willing to shell out that much money for them? Like, how do you feel about getting these guys in the room for just a 1-year deal? Like, my thing is, if they have waited this long to get signed by a team and we're looking at the beginning of August, there's a reason for it. It's probably because they want, at their age, a lot of upfront money that I just don't think the Bills would feasibly pay right now unless it was an absolute bargain. I mean, I even look at, like, and it's not to say it would be the same amount, but like the CJG deal a couple years ago where it was like 1 year for double-digit mil, I believe. And I'm like, I don't think the Bills can front this right now. So they would have to make it make sense. And it would have to either be like some backloaded void year deal like they did with Leonard Floyd, or it would have to be a multi-year deal, which, hey, if they could figure that out with Justin Simmons, like, I'm A-okay with that. I just don't know how likely it is at this point. I would say, though, I don't think Hyde is the unrealistic at this point. I think as the weeks go on, if they are finding absolute peril in the safety room, he's the one that you kind of turn to in an emergency and say, hey, we'll bring you back for a year. We need you. We got nobody else at this moment. I don't know how likely it is. And again, I've said, like, I do not want Micah Hyde to hurt himself any further. I do not want that man to be in any sort of peril for the rest of his life. And I think the best decision he could make is to not play football, but it's Hyde's decision. And if he wants to, then he will. And I think that if they were desperate to do it, the Bills would turn to Micah Hyde. So I don't think it's a totally unrealistic option to say he could come back, but when that would be, could it be now? Could it be further down the season? That would have to be seen. I think a lot about the Eric Weddle situation and how that panned out too. So I will say that I'm comfortable with them going for a free agent safety. I don't know who that would be right now. I mean, they just got Kareem Jackson. If you want to say he has a realistic shot, then sure. I mean, if they stay hurt, maybe, especially because he has experience playing closer to the line and more of a free safety role. But yeah, that's my stance on that. And I'll throw up this comment that says Cole isn't ready. No, I don't think he's ready yet. I think he was trending to becoming ready, though. I think Bishop was on a path to really solidifying himself in that room and getting more starting reps. And I think the injury he suffered today, if it isn't serious, will obviously mean that he gets to continue on that. And by next week's time, I would be very confident in saying that he's going to have more reps with the ones and probably be the guy they're turning to end up getting that starting role. Because I think, and I say it again, I've said it 100 times, I apologize for those that have heard this take. Like, if he's this guy that shows flashes in camp, he's your second round pick, they want him to be a starter eventually. So any indication that he has this, he's going to get it. If it's not right now, it might be in a couple weeks' time, but we just have to see what this injury does for his development. But I think Bishop, if he's healthy and able to go and play in more practices and preseason games, has a very realistic chance to be one of your starters, opposite what looks to be Taylor Rapp right now. So yeah, that's it for me, guys. I appreciate each and every one of you joining me tonight. Again, thank you to AJ Cebulski, who joined me and was a phenomenal guest as always. Thank you to all of you in the chat tonight who have been leaving comments, questions. It has been very much appreciated. Again, I don't usually go at this by myself very often. I feel very uncomfortable talking in front of a Logitech camera by myself, but we did it. We got to the end. I think I'm going to go cook dinner and watch the Yankees and make them make me sad because they already had a, subpar trade deadline outside of Jazz Chisholm, and now it looks like they're losing. I didn't check the score for a little while. And no worries, Puka. I know what you meant. I know you mean like Cole Bishop. Like, I'm sure you want him to be a starter too, and I didn't take it any other way. I don't think he's ready right now either. Like, I wouldn't trot him out on the field yet, but I think there's a path for him to become that starter, and it might happen very soon. But shout out to Jimmy, who just says nice. Hell yeah, brother. Nice. And go Bills from Ryan. Go Bills, Ryan. Again, guys, thank you all so much for being here. If you have time before you go, drop a like on this video. It would mean the world to me and to everyone at Cover One. You guys were all a big part of one of my episodes a few weeks ago, hitting my show's record views, and I very much appreciate all of you having a hand in that. So any likes, any shares to your friends who are Bills fans who might not know about our network, that is always greatly appreciated. Again, you could find me on Twitter at @show_DeRosa, where I tweet about the Bills and random things in my life. I will be back here again next week to check in on what's going on in the Bills world. But For all of you, again, enjoy the rest of your evening and stick around because Mr. Anthony Prohaska will be live after this show at 9 p.m. with the one and only Bruce Nolan to talk a bit more about training camp. And you know Anthony puts on a great show, so don't miss that. But for me, I'm out. It's time to go eat. You guys have a great rest of your night. And as always, go Bills. We'll see you soon.